They say closure comes when you face the wreckage, when you talk it through, when you scream, cry, fight for your version of the past. I didn't do any of that. When Lauren and I divorced, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask for the house. I didn't demand weekends or holidays or any kind of respect. I signed what needed to be signed, stood up from the kitchen table and left. No one stopped me. No one asked me to stay. Not even her. I caught a flight that same week. Half my life in a carry-on bag. A single suit folded with care, though I no longer had any reason to wear it. Pair of work boots. A photo album I never showed anyone. The rest I left behind: clothes, furniture, history. She could have it all. New continent. New number. New rhythm. That was my therapy. That was my escape. I ended up on the southern coast of Portugal. Rented a place so small the ceiling leaked in the morning fog. I kept the windows open, listened to the wind rattle through the shutters at night like someone trying to get in. My neighbors didn't speak English, and I didn't bother learning Portuguese. That silence was the point. No court dates, no therapy, no retelling of how things fell apart. Just stillness. The kind of stillness that lets you forget you ever existed as someone's husband, someone's stepfather. I wandered the cliffs in old boots until the soles wore thin. Ate sardines and stale bread. Drank coffee so bitter it felt like penance. I thought that was healing. I told myself I had moved on. Until my phone buzzed. A full month after the divorce. 30 days of silence. 30 days of pretending the past had died a natural death. Then, one message. American number. Marcus. We hadn't spoken since the divorce, maybe longer. He was one of those men who always stood too close when he talked, always smiled too wide. He knew everyone's business in Savannah, and somehow, even from an ocean away, I wasn't spared. His message was short. Lauren got married again. Small wedding. Last weekend. No picture. No preamble. Just that. I read it twice, as if the first time I hadn't understood English. She got married. Again. Already. I leaned back against the chipped wall, phone glowing in my hand, the ocean wind leaking through the cracked window beside me. My thumb hovered over the screen, but I didn't reply. What could I say? It didn't hurt. That's the thing. People assume betrayal burns. It doesn't. It hollows. It doesn't come with screaming matches or broken dishes. It comes like the tide, slow, cold, pulling everything you thought was solid out from under you. I thought we'd had something real. Not perfect, not even good toward the end. But real. I thought grief had weight, duration. That it would take time for her to let go of what we had built. Even if love was gone, memory should have counted for something. But it didn't. She replaced me like you'd replace a cracked coffee mug. Not with grief. Not with guilt. Just a quick wedding and a polished smile. Like I'd been a rehearsal. A mistake corrected in the final draft. 30 days. You can't even get mail forwarded that fast. I stayed in that chair for an hour. Maybe longer. The sun dipped. The room darkened. I didn't move. The realization settled in like mold. Quiet, spreading, permanent. It wasn't the marriage that ruined me. It was how easy it was for her. And then, that same night, the second message came. Her daughter, Megan. I had helped raise her since she was 10. She called me Mike until she was 16. Then she stopped calling me anything at all. She texted me, out of nowhere. Same tone. Same timing. Finally, a real family. That was all. No punctuation. No emoji. No explanation. Just 5 words that collapsed 16 years. I read the message, closed my eyes, and let it hit me square in the chest. No anger in her voice. No bitterness. Not even sarcasm. Just certainty. That was what gutted me. Not hate, but the calm, surgical clarity of someone who had already rewritten the story and erased me from the page. There had been no thank you. No hope you're okay. No moment of reflection. Just a child, now grown, who had looked at the man who paid her tuition, fixed her mother's leaking roof, missed his own father's funeral to be at her school concert, and decided he was never real to begin with. I taught her how to drive. I stayed up the night she had her wisdom teeth pulled, sitting in the hallway with a cold compress, listening to her cry through the gauze. I gave her away once in a different way to a boy I hated because she said he made her feel safe. But I didn't matter. Apparently none of it mattered. Because now there was a new man. A new stepfather, I assumed. Or maybe just the real thing. A name I didn't know. A face I hadn't seen. Someone good enough to invite to a wedding that happened 30 days after I signed the divorce papers. Megan called it a real family. As if I had been a placeholder. A delay. A clerical error. I didn't respond. Not to Marcus. Not to her. What could I say that didn't sound small? I set the phone on the floor beside the mattress. Lay on my back and stared at the peeling ceiling. The silence didn't feel clean anymore. Felt like punishment. I kept thinking back to the first time Lauren introduced me to Megan. She was 10. Shy. Eyes full of questions, like she knew I didn't belong. I brought her a gift, a puzzle. She took it, smiled politely, then set it on the table like a strange fruit she didn't trust. I should have seen it then. The walls were already built. But I told myself that walls could be climbed, broken down. That patience would earn me a place in her heart. 16 years of trying. 16 years of birthdays, vacations, scraped knees, and dentist appointments. 16 years of paying for her school, her braces, her camps, her phone bills. 16 years of carrying someone else's child like my own. And now, all I rated was 5 words and the flick of a digital guillotine. Finally, a real family. I had been the scaffolding. The part you pull down when the structure's done. I turned off the phone. Not to block them out, but because I'd finally heard them clearly. They were done with me, and in their eyes, I had never even started. I didn't watch the wedding video. Not at first. It found its way to me. Of course it did. Savannah's a small town with a big mouth. Someone forwarded it not out of cruelty, but habit. That southern way of wrapping gossip in pleasantries. Thought you might want to see how happy she looks. The file sat unopened on my phone for 3 days. I'd look at it, close it, look again. Finally, one night, after too much Vinho and not enough sleep, I pressed play. It was all there. Every detail curated. Every smile sharpened. A small venue just outside Atlanta. String lights, gold chairs. White linen that looked expensive but not flashy, the kind of subtle wealth Lauren always preferred. I saw familiar faces, old neighbors, mutual friends, the pastor from the church we used to attend, back when she still pretended to believe in forgiveness. And then I saw her, Lauren, hair pinned up the way she used to for Christmas dinners. That same half-smile. The one she wore when she was lying to someone but wanted to seem gracious. She didn't look different. Just emptied of history, erased. Next to her stood the man, taller than me, younger by 5 years, maybe more. Strong chin, sharp tucks, that smug posture of someone who thinks he's rescuing someone from their past. His hand rested gently on Megan's shoulder. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it, like that hand had always been there, like it belonged. I waited for the sting, but it didn't come. What I felt wasn't grief. It was confirmation. Everything I'd suspected, everything I'd swallowed for years, was true. They had never been mine. Not in the ways that mattered. The camera panned. Laughter. Clinking glasses. Megan raised a toast. Her voice confident. Rehearsed. To Mom and Tom. You've shown us what real love looks like. What family should feel like. The crowd cheered. Glasses lifted. A breeze moved through the venue. I imagined it colder than it should have been. The camera shook slightly as someone turned to the table behind them. That's when it happened. A voice. Off-screen. Casual. Drunk, maybe. So who's paying the old debts now? It was a joke, I think. Said with a smirk. Probably meant to be buried in the background noise. But the room heard it. You could see the ripple, heads turned, smiles faltered. And for a few long seconds, nobody laughed. The camera dipped awkwardly toward the floor. A blur of movement. A cough. Then silence. Even the band stopped. Like they'd all remembered something they weren't supposed to. Something unpaid. Something ugly. 5 minutes passed. No one said a word on camera. Just the awkward scuffle of silverware. Someone adjusting a tablecloth. The clip ended without music. without joy, just static. I stared at the blank screen. I didn't move, didn't speak. Exactly 5 minutes later, my phone rang. American number. Georgia code. I knew who it was before the first ring ended. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. "Hi," she said. "Lauren." Just that. One word. Soft. Like it still had power. Like it hadn't been buried in another man's name. I said nothing. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time. A ridiculous sentence. Every second of this call was a bad time. Still, I said, "No. Go ahead." A pause. Then a breath. I wanted to, well, I guess you probably heard about the wedding. I didn't answer. I heard the wind behind her. Probably standing on that wraparound porch I stained with my own hands 2 summers ago. She used to joke that it made the house feel like a painting. Anyway, she continued, "It was beautiful, Megan." Megan said some really kind things. I almost laughed. Kind? You call erasure kind? She's really grown up, Lauren added, as if I hadn't watched her do just that for 16 years. Then, finally, she landed where I knew she would. "There's something I need to ask." Of course there was. She didn't call for sentiment. She didn't call for regret. She called because someone in that room, maybe Tom, maybe Megan, maybe the drunk friend, had remembered what kept the lights on for all those years. What covered tuition. What kept Lauren's credit score above water. What name was still tied to the mortgage. Mine. "I know we agreed to keep things clean," she said. "No fights. No money back and forth." I stayed silent. "But," she hesitated, "Megan's finishing school this year. And the final payment, the one you promised, it hasn't gone through." Of course it hadn't, because I canceled it 2 weeks ago. Quietly, without anger, without explanation. "Mike," she added quickly, "we already told the school the funds were coming. If they don't arrive this week." Her voice cracked. Good. It meant the cracks were finally showing on her side too. I waited, let the silence stretch. "Is this about the wedding?" she asked, a little more defensively now. "I thought we were past that." Past that. As if the wedding was a footnote. As if Megan's message wasn't a knife. As if she hadn't rewritten our entire story with a guest list and a rented suit. I spoke slowly, calm. "I saw the video." A pause. "I don't know what you mean." I ignored the lie. "I saw Megan's toast. I saw the man with his hand on her shoulder. I heard the joke." Silence. And then, I continued, "I got your call. Mike, don't do this." "Do what?" "This isn't about us. This is about Megan's education." I almost smiled, because that's exactly what this was about. Not love, not family, not loyalty, just numbers, just the math behind their celebration. "I'm not angry," I said. "Not anymore." "You sound angry." "I'm not." I was past anger. Anger still cared. What I felt now was something colder, cleaner, clarity. "You built your new family, Lauren. Fast. No hesitation. No space to grieve. I get it. That's not fair." "Maybe not. But neither was this." "You were the one who left," she snapped suddenly, voice tightening. "You walked away." "I walked," I said, "because I was finished being tolerated." She fell silent. "You didn't defend me, Lauren. Not once. Not when Megan stopped speaking to me. Not when the jokes started. Not when people talked about the real dad, like I was a ghost. I didn't mean to. But you did. You meant to stay quiet. And now you're calling me because the silence you protected finally cost something." She didn't deny it. Couldn't. "I'm not paying it," I said. "Not anymore." Her breath caught. "Mike, please, just finish this last semester. We'll figure out the rest later." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "You told me the story was over. You married someone else. Megan made it clear where I stand. So let him pay." "He can't." "That's not my problem." She went quiet again. Long enough that I thought she might hang up. Then softly, "She's still your daughter." That sentence almost broke me. Almost. Because it was a lie. The final one. "No," I said. She was never mine. You just let me believe it long enough to pay the bills. And with that, I ended the call. Not in rage. Not in triumph. Just in finality. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was tortured, not because I felt guilt, but because something inside me had shifted. Some internal machine that had never stopped turning had finally powered down. The constant need to fix, to rescue, to step in and smooth over. It was gone. And in its place, silence. The kind of silence that doesn't ache. The kind that clears the air. I made coffee before the sun came up, watched the steam curl into the cold morning like breath from a body that had stopped needing anyone. Outside, the wind scratched against the window frame. The ocean below churned, slate gray and endless. Somewhere across that water, the calls had already begun. Megan's university, her advisor, the financial office. Somewhere, a woman in a headset was drafting a late notice, checking a file where my name had lived too long. I wondered if they still thought I was her father. That morning I sent one email. It wasn't long. Just a few lines to the bursar's office, copied to Lauren. Per our divorce agreement, I will no longer be responsible for tuition payments related to Megan H. Please remove my name from future communications. If you have any questions, refer to the account holder listed as guardian. Send. Done. Nothing dramatic. No fireworks. No curses typed in lowercase fury. Just release. By noon, the reaction began. Lauren called first. I didn't answer. Then a message. Mike, they're saying you've withdrawn support. This is serious. They could revoke her enrollment. Please respond. 10 minutes later, another. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this is Megan's life. Don't punish her for things she didn't mean. Didn't mean. That was the line. The defense. The plea. That she hadn't meant it. That she didn't understand the weight of her words. But that was the thing she had understood. That's what made it real. That's what made it final. Because cruelty isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, calm, surgical. Like her message. Finally, a real family. That wasn't an accident. That was a verdict. And now the sentence had come due. The third message was different. Shorter. She's crying. That one almost reached me. Almost. But I kept the phone face down on the table. Let the buzzes roll past me like distant thunder. Nothing urgent. Nothing new. Then came the knock. Not on my door, not yet, but metaphorically. A message from Megan herself. No salutation. No warmth. I need to talk to you. Need. Not want. Not miss. Need. Because the bills were real now. The support she'd taken for granted had dried up overnight. The future she'd built on my sacrifices had sprung a leak. And suddenly, the ghost was real again because the money had vanished. I didn't reply. That night, I watched the video again. The wedding. The toast. The silence after the joke. I paused it there. That moment. The precise second the room remembered my name without saying it. They all knew. Megan. Standing beside Tom with her champagne flute and her careful smile. She knew. Lauren, in her bridal dress, blinking just a little too quickly. She knew. Even Tom, glancing toward the laughter with something like dread. He knew too, because beneath all that celebration was a ledger. And my name was on every page. And now they had to balance it without me. 3 days passed before the next message. Megan again. They're going to drop me from enrollment. I called Dad. He said he can't help. Please. No punctuation. Just panic. I imagined her in that tiny apartment I used to pay for, sitting on the floor with unpaid notices spread around her like confetti from a party no one wanted to clean up. I imagined her fingers shaking as she typed. Not from regret. From fear. Still, I didn't answer. That same day, Lauren called again. Left a voicemail. Mike, listen, I know this has been hard. I know things were said. But Megan is still your family. You were there for everything. You raised her. Doesn't that mean anything? It did. Once. It had meant sleepless nights, drained savings, missed vacations, skipped meals. It had meant staying through slammed doors and teenage silence and passive-aggressive birthday cards that never once used the word dad. But that was over now. Because when the time came for that meaning to be returned, in the form of gratitude, or even the smallest act of recognition, what I got was a message. Finally, a real family. So no, not anymore. The fourth day brought the storm. They showed up. Not just texts. Not calls. They flew across the ocean. I don't know how they found me. Maybe a return address I forgot to change. Maybe a mutual friend. But they found the building. The cracked stucco. The narrow stairwell. The knock was sharp. 3 times. Not tentative. I didn't answer immediately. I made them wait. Then slowly I opened the door. Lauren stood in the hallway. Alone. Hair tied back. No makeup. The kind of look she only wore when things were truly falling apart. "Megan's in the car," she said. She couldn't bring herself to come up. I didn't speak. "Mike!" She looked at me like I was a stranger. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside. Not as an invitation. Just as a gesture. I didn't say welcome. I didn't ask how the flight was. We both knew this wasn't a visit. She sat down at the small table. Looked around the room like she was seeing it for the first time. The emptiness. The worn floorboards. The walls I never decorated. "This is where you've been?" I nodded. "It's different." I waited. Finally, she looked at me directly. She didn't mean it. I raised an eyebrow. "The message," she clarified. "That night. Real family. She didn't think you'd see it." That made me laugh. Short. Dry. "So if I hadn't seen it, it wouldn't have mattered?" She flinched. She was angry. Confused. She thought maybe you didn't care anymore. "I left," I said. "Because you let her treat me like I didn't exist." She was a kid. She was 21. Lauren looked down. Folded her hands. She was hurt. "No," I said, sharper now. She was honest. That message was truth. Calm, quiet truth. The kind that doesn't come out in anger. The kind that's been sitting there for years. Lauren didn't argue. Because she couldn't. She thought Tom could step in, she said finally. That he'd cover things. That it would be easy. And now, she looked up. He can't. Of course he couldn't. That's the thing about new families. They're built on promises. But promises don't pay bills. "Mike," she said, voice breaking. "I know we weren't perfect, but you were her father. In every way that counted." I leaned forward. No, I was convenient. I was reliable. I was the man who signed checks and stayed silent. She started to speak, but I raised a hand. I loved her. God help me. I loved her like my own. But love without respect is a leash, and I'm done wearing it. Silence. Then soft, hesitant. She reached into her purse, pulled out a letter, handwritten, folded twice. She wrote this. I didn't reach for it. She said if I could get you to read it, maybe things could change. I took the letter, didn't open it, just set it on the table between us. "What do you want, Lauren?" She looked at me. "I want you to help her." Of course. Not apology. Not healing. Just help. Because in their world I was still the net. Still the safety. Still the man they could ignore until the ground gave out. I looked at the letter. Then back at her. "No." Her mouth opened. Eyes widened. "Mike, please." "No," I said again. She made her choice. So did you. She stood. Anger now. The mask slipping. "You think this makes you strong? Punishing her?" "I'm not punishing her," I said, standing too. "I'm teaching her the one thing she never learned from either of you. Consequences." She stared at me. For a second I thought she might scream. But then, she didn't. She just picked up her purse. Walked to the door. Paused. "She still loves you, you know?" I didn't answer. She left. The letter stayed on the table. I didn't touch it. The letter sat on my table for 3 days. I didn't touch it. I moved around it like it was a live wire, always close, never curious enough to open it. I'd built too much silence to break it with folded paper. I told myself it didn't matter what was written. That apology at gunpoint isn't apology at all. But still, I didn't throw it away. It stayed there through the mornings, through the empty coffee mugs, through the long evenings where the ocean tapped gently at the edge of the world outside my window. Eventually, I did open it, not out of hope, just to confirm there was none left. The handwriting was hers, Megan's, slanted, deliberate, just like her, always in control of how she appeared, never careless enough to be truly seen. Dear Mike, I'm not sure if this will reach you, or if you'll care to read it, but I want to try. Already, I could hear the carefulness, the distance in the phrasing. Not Dad, not I'm sorry, just I want to try. Try what? I was angry when you left. Not because you left, but because you didn't say goodbye. I stared at that line for a while. Goodbye? She wanted a goodbye from a man she dismissed without a word? Mom told me you went overseas. I thought it was your way of saying you were done with us. Done with me. So when I sent that message, I wanted it to sting. So she admitted it. It was meant to cut. Not confusion. Not immaturity. Not youthful impulse. Precision. I know now that I said something unforgivable, and I've replayed that message in my head 100 times, wishing I could take it back. But the truth is, I can't. She was right. You did more for me than my father ever did. You showed up. You listened. You stayed. She didn't say she loved me. She didn't say she saw me as her father. Just that I stayed. It wasn't enough. Tom is good to Mom, but he isn't you. Too late. I'm scared. The tuition deadline passed. They're going to drop me from classes. I don't blame you for what you did. I just don't know what to do next. There it was. The fear. The real reason for the letter. Not remorse. Not healing. Just collapse. She reached out not from love, but from the rubble. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I understand now. I didn't then. She signed it Megan. No love. No always. Just Megan. I folded the letter in half. Then again. Tucked it into the back of a drawer I hadn't opened in weeks. And I let it stay there. Because something else had arrived that morning. An envelope. Thin. White. Handwritten address. No return label. Inside a check. Small. Insulting, really. From Tom. A note attached. I know it's not much, but I heard you've been carrying things for a long time. Thought I should start taking some of it off your back. It was signed Tom H. Nothing else. I held that check between two fingers, like it might rot the moment I accepted it. I looked at the amount. Just over $2,000. Barely a dent in what I'd paid over the years. Less than a month's tuition. Not even a full rent cycle. But it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the assumption behind it, that he could pay his way into the story now. That he could purchase dignity. I shredded the check without blinking. He wasn't paying me. He was buying silence. A receipt that said we did our part too. But it was too late. The truth had already been written. Not in ink, but in years. In everything they'd accepted. In everything they'd refused to give back. I spent the rest of the day walking the cliffs near the coast. Wind in my ears, old boots scraping the stone. Felt like penance. Felt earned. Because I had learned something. Finally. It wasn't that they didn't love me. It was that they never needed to. Need was the language of dependence. They needed the money. The car repairs. The late-night pickups from parties they lied about attending. They needed the college tuition and the credit card for emergencies that always turned into designer clothes and bar tabs. But love? Love is shown in absence. In how people speak when you're not in the room. In what they say when you're no longer useful. And when I became absent, they replaced me. Quickly. Publicly. They didn't mourn. They toasted. That's what broke me. Not the divorce. Not the silence. The celebration. The smiles. The ease. After the walk, I returned home. Sat on the edge of the bed. Listened to the waves. And I thought about what it means to raise someone else's child. They don't tell you the truth. Not the courts, not the therapists, not even your friends. They say it's noble, brave, selfless. But what they don't say is this. You are building something on land that can be taken from you at any moment. You can give everything and still be told you were never part of it. Your love is provisional. Your effort is invisible. Your sacrifice is expected but never acknowledged. You are a guest in your own home, a donor, a warm body with a checkbook. And if you ask for gratitude, for recognition, you're told you're being sensitive. You're told they're just kids. But I wasn't raising kids. I was carrying ghosts, their real father, their former life, the image they wanted, not the man who showed up, but the one who never did so he could stay perfect in their minds. I had been real, present, flesh and blood, and that's exactly why I was rejected. Because real people make mistakes. Real people say no. Real people get tired. And they wanted a fantasy. Tom could still be that for them. But now, when the tuition is late, when the lights dim, when the safety net snaps, they have to look that fantasy in the face. They have to live in the world they created. Megan wasn't expelled. I found out a few weeks later, through a friend, someone I used to work with. She picked up extra shifts, found a roommate. Lauren took a short-term loan. Tom, apparently, started driving part-time for rideshare to help cover what he couldn't afford. They pieced it together. But something had changed. The story was no longer clean. Now, whenever they talk about the new family, there's a shadow, an echo of the man who built the foundation before they changed the locks. My name isn't spoken, but the consequences are. That's my legacy. Not warmth, not love, just debt, absence. Wait, it's enough. I haven't heard from Megan since. No follow-up, no second letter, not even a postcard. I don't expect one. Some debts never get repaid. Some apologies come too late. Some families stay broken no matter how much blood you spill trying to hold them together. I don't live with bitterness. I live with clarity. And clarity, I've learned, is better than hope. Hope is dangerous. Hope kept me paying, kept me waiting, kept me believing that love alone could rewrite biology, could heal what silence created. But hope is how they kept me trapped. Now I have something else. Distance, silence, control. They call it abandonment. I call it the bill coming due. So I'll ask you, whoever's listening, was I wrong? Was I cruel to leave? Was I heartless to cut them off? Was I cold to ignore a letter written in desperation? Not repentance? Or did I simply become what they always said I wasn't? A stranger. Tell me, if you had raised someone else's child, paid their way, filled their life, built them a future, only to be erased when it was convenient, would you have stayed? Would you have kept paying? Or would you have done what I did? And finally walked away,